Hi, it's May 15th, 2025. Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let's talk NBA. We're going to keep this video really macro. Um, let's look at the Eastern Conference. Right now, in Game 5, the Boston Celtics came out and blew out the Knicks. Right? So the next game is going to be at Madison Square Garden, Game 6. Let me say this. In sports, you have something that we'll call fallen soldier syndrome, right? Where some key guy on a team gets cut down by injury, etc. And the team will then give, their best effort. They'll play their best ball, right? Their teammate has been hurt. Everyone understands the seriousness. The rest of the team will go out and they will deliver, right? But understand that's short lived. In time, what happens is eventually the realization hits that the team's without one of their leaders. Jason Tatum went down. It's a bad injury. Torn Achilles means that his next season is in jeopardy. Let me point out that Dan Marino got cut down by a ruptured Achilles. Basketball is a brutal sport. There are others who had a bad Achilles, Kobe, and they weren't the same afterwards. So just understand, this injury is devastating. It's going to take the team some time to adjust. That Tatum injury knocks the Celtics out of contention to defend their NBA title. Right? Just to be as brutal as I can. Let me, from one man's opinion, right? Let me also say, too, that Tatum is an underrated superstar. I would argue that on a team where Jaylen Brown won the Finals MVP last year, I would argue that Tatum is much more valuable, right? His game is a little bit eccentric. What I want people to do is to look at the box scores the last few games, before Tatum's injury, obviously, and look at Tatum's rebounding. Folks, that's off the page. Off the page for Tatum's position. In other words, Tatum is a guy who can go in the paint and can rebound like a center. We don't think of Tatum that way. Also, don't look at Tatum's shooting percentage. Look at his effective field goal percentage. It's very high. Right? Also, look at Tatum's all NBAs. Right? Tatum has a laid-back, cool persona. He's kind of like a jazz musician in terms of how he comes across. Folks, this guy is a future Hall of Famer. Right? I would argue that Tatum is really one of the biggest reasons Boston has recently been in 2 NBA finals and won one of them. Right? Boston, even with a backcourt that both were on the U.S. Olympic team, and even with a third guy who won NBA Finals MVP, right? Boston's not going to be close to the same without him. So, I'm a Knicks fan. I have a long memory of the Knicks blowing it in the playoffs, right? The only thing similar would be, the 76er fan base, right? But let me just say this. I expect the Knicks to win Game 6. I expect the Knicks to get by the Boston Celtics. simply because reality is going to dawn on the Celtics. And they're going to realize without Tatum, they can't win it all. Let's also look a little bit more closely at the Eastern Conference. Understand the Indiana Pacers made the NBA's Final Four last year. They were in the conference finals, right? Their style of play is upbeat. Now, there was a recent poll of players, and the players thought that Tyrese Halliburton was among the most overrated players in the league, right? That was the thinking for that poll, right? The fans, of course, must have read the poll results because they started yelling at him, not Indy fans, but the other fans. They started yelling at him, overrated, overrated, right? You know, I just want to say that it's moments like this why all of us should be gamblers. Folks, Tyrese Halliburton is one of the more valuable players in the league. He certainly is for his team. You watch Indy, and how did Indy beat Cleveland? It was with speed to offset the size gap, right? The problem with Indy is Indy doesn't have, bigs who really are low post, right? Their bigs are often outside, taking jumpers and stuff like that, right? They don't have that horse who's going to be blocking a lot of shots, doing a lot of rim protection. So what they have instead is a point guard who's among the best in terms of getting assists. Not only that, and this is as important, they have a point guard who's the emotional centerpiece of that team. Right? Halliburton's style is this, laid back, free and easy style, right? Where he's talking trash. He's talking to teammates. He's keeping them involved. Think Gary Payton of the Sonics. Right? Think of the Pacers. Who's the emotional center of that team? Folks, it's Tyrese Halliburton. Right? If Halliburton is not playing in the game, folks, I'm not sure if the Pacers know who they are. Now, the reason gamblers benefit is, I'm just telling you, sometimes the coaches don't know what's going on. Sometimes the other players don't know what's going on. I have no doubt you have a lot of players who voted in that overrated poll who run other teams, right? And they see Tyrese running his mouth, talking to guys. They see him, being a cheerleader for his teammates and stuff like that. And they don't understand how vital that is. You, the gambler, needs to understand it. Right? Just like Tatum, in my opinion, is indispensable to the loaded Boston Celtics. Tyrese Halliburton, who they're calling overrated, is indispensable to the Indiana Pacers, right? I hope Pacer fans wisen up and start yelling themselves overrated to Tyrese Halliburton to let him know, hey, we're not buying what the rest of the league is saying, right? We love you. We know you. We understand you. Right? I'll just say Indiana is back in the conference finals in large part because of Tyrese Halliburton. He's going to be a problem for the Knicks. If there's one guy on Indy who an opposing team needs to somehow find a way to discourage, it's the guy who his players, the players in the league, think is overrated. Right? You're a gambler. You don't care what's being said. You have a basic question, right? Is this guy effective? How important is this guy? I'm just telling you from this seat. Tatum, he's essential. Tyrese Halliburton, he's essential. Right? Let's also talk about something that needs to be said. The Eastern Conference had two Goliaths. I'm shocked at how the conference has played out. It had two Goliaths, right? Cleveland, the 1 seed. They made it to the playoffs. They were banged up, right? Boston, the 2 seed, right? The reigning champions. Sadly for them, Porzingis was really a part-timer because of illness. Jason Tatum is hurt, and he's been first-team NBA several years, multiple years, right? So Boston diminished. So what I want people to think about is how that opens it up for the Western Conference. Right now, we're well into this playoff season. After Steph Curry immediately left the game with a hamstring injury, right? I made a video here online where I said, look, you need to take the T-Wolves to win this series. You're getting them at 16 to 1 to win the whole thing. Grab that bet. You can hedge it later and make a multiplier of what you would make just betting on them to win that Golden State series. Well, they took out Golden State, right? Understand how banged up Golden State was, right? Jimmy Butler fell on his pelvis. Now, Butler was out there. He's blood and guts, right? The bottom line is Golden State wasn't close to healthy. Right? Let me also say this too. The world saw flashes of something we've known about here in the Bay for a while. Take a look at the last two box scores. Take a look at Jonathan Kuminga. Right? The Warriors are going to have their hand forced here because GMs looking at this finals understand that Kuminga is a major scorer, right? The next generation of Warriors in the building, too. They have a guy, Podiemski, right? He could be big time as well, right? The Warriors are going to have a hard time keeping these guys off the court. Kuminga's interesting because you get the feeling he doesn't quite get along with Steve Kerr. Right? The question is whether the Warriors, knowing that this guy is a talent, right? Kuminga's a guy who, if he plays every day, could average 20 a game. Right? The Warriors are going to have to decide. Do we play him on a team where we have the short guy thing covered with Curry and Jimmy? Right? Do we play him, right? And Podiemski. Do we play him or do we trade him to get a rim protector big? Right? Because, truth be told, the Warriors are getting by with Draymond Green, who's still one of the best defensive players in the league, guarding bigger men. Right? And Draymond, let's face it, the thing that makes Draymond great, the thing that makes Draymond, quite frankly, a future Hall of Famer, is also the thing that works against him. Right? Draymond is one of these guys who gets emotionally caught up in the game, and he can't control it. Right? So Draymond's doing things like throwing elbows. Then when they call a tech on him, he says, "Who, me?" Then you look at the replay and you see him look at the guy and throw an elbow. Right? Draymond's also older. The Warriors need help under the basket. What do they do with Jonathan Kuminga? Well, let's talk about that 16-1 play that I suggested on the T-Wolves. They're already past the first series. Right? Understand, folks, they're in the Western Conference Finals. They're 4-0 on the year against Denver. They're 2-2 against OKC. Now, I believe OKC beats Denver. Right? They have Game 7 at OKC. They're ahead in the series. Right? Denver, guys are talking. Right? Jamal Murray disagrees with Joker. Let's face it, too. Early in the series, Aaron Gordon, who went to Mitty, a high school close to where I live, right? I live in a part of San Jose where people know of Aaron Gordon, right? You're in a bar, someone will start talking about Aaron Gordon. But Aaron Gordon's been playing out of his head for games in this series. Right now, I'll agree it's hard to beat Denver in Denver. I'll agree if you look at the splits on Jamal Murray, he's much better at home than he is on the road. Right? But if I had to bet on who wins that series, I'm going to take the team that won 68 games. Right? I'm going to take the team that only has to win one of two, not two of two, to win that series. So right here, let's make a move. You're sitting on 16-1 on the T-Wolves to win it all. This is where, while you have uncertainty on who wins the OKC Denver series, this is where you need to say to yourself, okay, of this 16-1, I'm going to bet a quarter of what I would win if I hit on the 16-1. I have to give away some of the play. So let's give a real world example. If I bet $1 on one of these online sports books, right? Check the legality in your jurisdiction. If I bet $1 on the T-Wolves to win 16, and now I'm by the injured Golden State Warriors, right? At this stage, I should bet $4 on the T-Wolves. I should bet $4 on the Thunder to win it all. Right? Because, just understand, the Thunder are going to be favored over Minnesota. Right? I'm going to get better odds on the Thunder to win it all. The Thunder won 68 games. The Thunder were the 1 seed in their conference. As inspired as the Knicks have been playing, coming back from 20 down in multiple games, as inspired as Indy's been playing, right? Cleaning out the 1 seed early. I don't think either of those teams, if everyone stays healthy, everyone still standing stays healthy, I don't think either of those teams beats OKC in an NBA Finals. Right now, obviously, my take will change if I see Shea and he's out with a hamstring problem, or suddenly Chet's hurt. If some big wig gets hurt, Jay Will's hurt. If some big wig gets hurt, then, hey, we have to revisit it. Right? That's what injuries do to you. But if everyone stays healthy, let me just say, I expect OKC to beat Denver, to get by Denver, right? To make it to the conference finals. I'll admit the T-Wolves are underrated. T-Wolves OKC, that's going to be interesting to watch. But if you take the advice I'm offering here, understand you'll already have the winner of that series because you'll be on both sides of the play. Right? I think OKC beats the Knicks if the Knicks make it to the NBA Finals. Knicks, of course, are higher rated than Indy in the playoff seeding. I believe OKC beats Indy. Right, Chet Holmgren, for those who don't know, folks, he's a rim protector who has a three-point shot. Right, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a team that's deeper than the OKC Thunder. Right, so what I want people to do, if you're looking at 16-1 on the T-Wolves, right, if you took the advice from the earlier video, bet a quarter of what you would win, right? If I bet $1 on them and I'm looking at winning $16, take $4 and bet that on the OKC Thunder. Right? At those odds, if the Thunder beat the T-Wolves after getting by Denver, you still would have made a profit. Right? Think it through. Right? Let me say this too. If Denver beats OKC, okay, you've lost that $4. But you still have very good odds on a team that has beaten Denver all 4 games they've played head-to-head this season. Right? Let me also say, too, that while it's iffy on whether the T-Wolves would beat the Knicks or the Pacers, right? Just understand the T-Wolves have one of these anomaly stars, right? You understand that Anthony Edwards is not Michael Jordan, right? Jordan was every night. Let me just say this too. There were some nights where Jordan could not hit the side of a barn, right? Jordan certainly didn't have Anthony Edwards' three-point shot. But understand, on those nights where Jordan couldn't hit the side of a barn, you understood that Jordan was still one of the best defenders you ever saw in your life. Look at the number of all defensive teams recognizing that Jordan, in the middle of his career, took off multiple seasons. Right? So, Anthony Edwards is decent defensively. He's not Jordan defensively. Also, Jordan, career. And this includes his time with the Wizards. Right? Where, by the way, he had a better plus-minus than LeBron had this year. Just to understand career. Jordan averaged over 30 points a game. Now, the thing with Anthony Edwards is that there are going to be some games where, even for old-timers like me, he looks like Michael Jordan. There'll be some games where, from 3, he looks like Steph Curry. Right? Understand, when Edwards clicks, and it could happen on any night. Right? When Edwards clicks, I don't care where the game is. In fact, the splits on Minnesota, I don't want to sound too wonkish here, but the splits on Minnesota, I believe they're as good on the road as they are at home. Just to understand, Anthony Edwards in a 7-game series is going to give you a win, at least one. If he's hot, he could give you multiple wins. Understand, too, the way that team is built, they have some ringers. In other words, it's late in the game. They have a small lead. They can give the ball to Mike Conley. Right? People are scratching their heads. Folks, Conley is the vet who doesn't turn over the ball, and who, if you foul him, can hit 90% of his free throws. Folks, that's what he did this year. 90% of his free throws. Right? So it's very hard to come back from a deficit in the closing minutes against the T-Wolves. Another secret to the T-Wolves is the fact that Anthony Edwards is excellent from the free throw line. Let me say this too. The T-Wolves, I'll agree, Rudy Gobert is shaky from the free throw line, but the T-Wolves have guys like Naz Reid. Right? This guy would be in the starting lineup for most teams. This guy already has a 6-Man of the Year award. This is the tall guy with range. Right? The T-Wolves are very well put together. And they play awfully well on the road. Right? This is a little bit different than the Pacers, where Rick Carlisle is really, one of the best coaches in the league. And he has figured out that he needs to give the keys to the car to his point guard, Tyrese Halliburton. And he needs to sit back and allow the Pacers to run up and down the court. Right? He's channeling early 1980s Pat Riley, who gave the keys to Magic Johnson and sat back and watched the Lakers run up and down the court. The problem, though, is that the Pacers don't have Kareem, James Worthy, Michael Thompson, right? They, Magic, Norm Nixon, then Byron Scott, right? Coop, one of the best defenders in the game at the time, right? They don't have the Laker level of talent, right? I would argue that the T-Wolves are better put together than the Indiana Pacers. For our purposes, what's important here is you're sitting on 16-1, a 16-1 ticket on the T-Wolves to win it all, right? And we want to shift some of that 16-1 onto the 68-win OKC Thunder, while there's still some uncertainty in the market about the Thunder. Right? Let me just say, as good and as flashy as the Thunder are offensively, they are that good defensively. Right? That's going to be a tough team to deal with in the playoffs. And they have a coach who's flat. In other words, the arena could be on fire. The Thunder head coach is going to, be a Dean Smith type guy, talk to the players, low-key voice, calm, and stuff like that. Right? The Thunder are the young team who know they blew it in last year's playoffs. Right? Let me just say this diplomatically. If I'm a member of the Thunder, I would not leave that team. Just like if I were a member of the Boston Celtics, I wouldn't leave that team. Right? I would look around and I would realize Shea's a young guy. Chet's a young guy. These guys have the chance to win multiple rings. There are very few teams in the league where you can say that. Right? The rest of the team, Lou Dort and stuff like that, I want you to look at their plus minuses on the season. There's a great website online, it's StatMuse, where you can punch in a guy and look up his plus minus. And you're going to see several OKC Thunder above 400. Right, folks? They were only 82 games. Right? They're telling you on average, these guys, when they're on the court, their team scores 5 more points per game than when they're not on the court. There's several guys like that on the OKC Thunder. That's a dangerous team. So, to sum up, I expect the Knicks to get by the Celtics. I'm not worried about the fallen soldier Game 5. Right? I'm not worried about that. I know the Celtics won big the last game. I expect the Knicks to win that series. If the Thunder get to the NBA Finals, I expect the Thunder to beat whoever they play. Either the Knicks or Indy. It's all there for them. Right? I expect the Thunder to get by the best player in the game. That's Joker. And the Denver Nuggets. So I'm expecting the Thunder to make the conference finals. The wild card, the open question, is which T-Wolves team are they going to play? Right? Just understand, T-Wolves tough on the road. Anthony Edwards is that superstar who, if he blows up, there's little anybody else in the building can do. Right? He's more combustible that way, in my opinion, than Shea is, who's going to win the MVP. Those are my thoughts. Just sharing one man's opinion. Let's hear yours in the comment section. of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.